time. I think it's going to work this time. The Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab episode 825 for Monday, July 20th, 2020. And welcome to the Mac Observer's Mac Geek Gab, the show where we take your questions, your tips, your cool stuff found, we mash them all together into an agenda. And then we follow that agenda with some tangential detours here and there, learning all sorts of stuff because the goal is for each of us to learn at least 5 new things every single time we get together. Sponsors for this episode include a new sponsor, Raycon.com/MGG, actually buyraycon.com/MGG. And then, of course, Linode.com/MGG and Sunsoil.com/MGG. We'll talk more about each of those in a little bit here during the episode. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton.
And here in sweltering, it's already 90 degrees, Fairfield, Connecticut, this is John F. Braun.
Yeah, it's crazy how I mean, I guess it's how it always works in New England, right? We get a period of hot weather, and then it rains like crazy, and the temperature drops and the humidity drops, and it's like 70 and crisp and cool and perfect, and then it heats back up, and here we are again. So let's go find water safely, distantly, and bask in it. So there you go. Yeah. All right, we got we have all kinds of things to talk about today. We've got quick tips and cool stuff found, and we're going to talk about repairing iCloud syncing. I've been learning a lot about that, unfortunately, this week, but I feel like I'm on the other side of it, so we'll talk some about that and backing up things and all the stuff that we talk about. So we will start with a quick tip from listener Robin, who says, if you right-click on the folder next to the radio buttons at the top of the Finder, you will get a list of parent folders to choose from. And this is absolutely true. So really what we're talking about is in the sort of title bar in the Finder, you've got over on the left, you've got the radio buttons, which are the red, yellow, green. And then in the middle of that, it shows you the name of the folder that you're on. And if you control click on that folder, you see the hierarchy that leads to that folder from the very top of the computer. And the nice part is you can navigate through that hierarchy. So if you want to go up a level or up 3 levels, or even just see where you are, that's how you can do it. Now, if you like to know where you are at all times, go into the Finder and say in the View menu, choose Show Path Bar. And that will show you at the bottom of the Finder window the path to whatever folder you're in right there. And yes, you can click on I think you have to double click. Yeah, double click on the items in that path bar to go up there as well. So multiple quick tips rolled into one. Fun, right, John? Yeah, I know. I love this kind of stuff. You got any more to add to that?
Nope. No, I know about that one, but it's good to revisit.
It is good. Yeah.
Especially if you get lost in the depths of the file system.
Yeah. Yeah. Having those breadcrumbs helps for sure. Yep. All right. Then we'll move on to Peter, who has another quick tip for us. Peter says, I just set up a new MacBook Air and I'm doing all of the tweaks that I'm used to. I want to say that one thing I can't live without is the double tap to drag setting on my trackpad. This allows, in either text or to get a rectangular selection, me to double tap, then hold on the beginning, then drag, and then release to form a selectable region. I feel it's so much easier, and now that I'm used to it, intuitive, than holding a second digit down while dragging. But to get it set up, you have to do things a little differently. You go to System Preferences, Accessibility, Pointer Control, Mouse and Trackpad tab, then Trackpad Options, and then check the Enable Dragging with Drag Lock box. And he's got an explanation for us as by way of an Apple support article that we will absolutely put in the show notes here. But yeah, I had no idea about this. This is yet another one of those things we always say, take a look in accessibility for interesting little features. I mean, they are built to help people that have, various issues with one or more of their senses or whatever, but, or appendages or however it goes. But they can be things that can make life more convenient for all of us in different ways, because none of us are the same. So yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. He says it may be hard to get used to at first, but in the long run, he says I find it very nice. He says, but I haven't been able to convince my wife that it's a better way to go, though. And it may not be for her, right? Like, that's the reality of this stuff is it's nice to be able to customize things, and that's what accessibility sort of offers, is all these little nitpicks of customization that Apple doesn't want to clutter up the mouse or trackpad tab or any of the tabs with. But it's like, yeah, this would be a good thing to have for one of a variety of reasons. So I like it. Pretty good. Any thoughts on that one, John?
No.
Okay. Let's go to some cool stuff found. We're always here talking about HomeKit and just smart home in general. And one of the problems with HomeKit, of course, is that certainly at the beginning of all of this, it was very difficult for accessories to join HomeKit, because you actually basically needed special hardware inside of your accessories in order to support HomeKit. So there was no way to retroactively make things work. Apple has backed off on that quite a bit. It was all in the name of security. It wasn't like they were out to intentionally make it difficult for people, but they were out to intentionally make it super secure, and that caused some headaches for folks. But they've made life a little bit easier, but it's still not quite there. It doesn't have as much as, say, the Amazon A lady or Google G person. I guess you can have either one of them to be male or female voices. Anyway, however, there are lots of different solutions that we've talked about here, and there's a new one to us that listener Tom says, what do you think about the HOOBS project? HOOBS, and it's at hoobs.org, and it's called HOOBS in a Box. And it's built to aggregate all, they say that they support over 1,000 devices or something. It's built to aggregate them all into your HomeKit scenario. So it's just this box you plug into your network, and then it sort of does all the hard work and advertises all of your non-HomeKit things as HomeKit things, so that you can have one place to go to sort of manage everything. I got to check this out, because if it'll support like the Wise stuff the way that I want it supported, it might solve my age-old I want motion in my garage to turn on the lights in my garage issue. And like right now, I don't own the right gear to make that happen. So HOOBS might be to the rescue. But I think it's like $179 or $169 or something like that. But I don't know. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, $169 right now. So just a little Ethernet box. And I think, John, I was reading about HOOBS. It sounds like HOOBS in a box is one way to do it, but at least based on my quick reading, it seemed like people were able to like install HOOBS on their, Raspberry Pi or something like that. Like I think there's other paths to get to, but I'm not entirely sure. The HOOBS in a box is certainly the easy way to go. But I don't know. So,
okay.
Yeah, seems pretty good. Are you doing anything with HomeKit these days, or none of your stuff is HomeKit compatible?
Yeah, I tried running the home application the other day, and the only things that show up are my Apple TV and my Airport Express. So,
but not everything will just magically show up in HomeKit. Like there is an add accessory path that you have to choose and like scan the QR code on the accessory. Cause like your Eros should show up in HomeKit.
Oh yeah. I think I did that on the Eero side as I added it as a HomeKit device.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, the more I use HomeKit, And the more Apple does with it, I mean, this doesn't sound like any great surprise. The more I like it, the better it gets, right? So, or perhaps in reverse order, the better it gets, and therefore, the more I like it. So, I would love a world where HomeKit could manage all of my things. That world, at least for me, is nearly impossible to exist at the moment. But maybe something like HOOBS can get me closer. So, all right. Let's see, John. I played with a few cool stuffs found this week from our friends at Anker. They now have entered the Thunderbolt dock market. And they have, they've got 2 Thunderbolt docks. Sort of the flagship one, easy for me to say, is their PowerExpand Elite 13-in-1. And it is, in terms of the amount of ports and sort of how it works, it's on par with like the OWC one or the CalDigit one. Very much of the form factor of the CalDigit one, and requires the same exact amount of power as the CalDigit one, which I thought was interesting, but different power adapters, like you cannot interchange them. But it's got a bunch of ports on the front of it, including SD, micro SD, a headphone jack, and a 5 gig USB-A port. What I really like about this one is it's got 2 10 gig USB-C ports on the front of it, which is great. That, with more and more devices supporting 10 gig USB-C, that's a good thing. And then on the back, there are 3 more USB-A ports, 2 Thunderbolt ports. So it does support daisy chain pass through. In addition, power in both directions, 85 watts up to your laptop, 18 watts out of the other Thunderbolt port for iPhone. And I think one of the USB-C ports on the front of it also supports power delivery out. So, not surprising, Anker kind of looking at the power aspect as much as everything else. The only weird part about this, and it comes with a Thunderbolt 3 cable, which is key because those are not cheap. It's $299, but the only weird part is it's got a power button on it, John. I don't know. Right. Yeah. The look on your face was the same I felt. Like, why would I want to turn power off? And I tried it. Like, I wasn't sure if it was turning off like only power or if it was powering down the device. And it's the latter. When I had a drive connected to it and I hit the button and it was like, yep, no, we're all done now. Drive went offline. macOS yelled at me. It's like, don't know why I'd want a power button on here, but maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody can explain it to me. I don't know.
Well, the other day I had something. Normally I have the monoprice, is my primary display. And then I have one that I bought a while ago that's high res, but not as high res.
Okay.
But every now and then the Mac doesn't pick the right screen. It like I was doing a software update, and when it restarted, it selected my secondary screen as and it didn't even see. It didn't even see my 4K screen until I pulled the cable out and put it back in. Then it was like, oh yeah, hi, there you are.
I've seen that for sure. With display, is it DisplayPort or are you running it HDMI?
I am running. Yeah, we got a question about this coming up, but so both of mine are. So my 4K screen is on HDMI, and my other screen is it eventually ends in HDMI, though I have a DisplayPort.
Okay.
So I have a DisplayPort to HDMI adapter, and I have that screen plugged into my OWC dock.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah.
So the answer is I'm HDMI on both eventually.
No, your computer thinks you're DisplayPort on one and HDMI on the other. I think that's the difference, right? Is that, but it could be that the translation between the two is the wonky part, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So in that scenario, being able to turn the dock on and off might cause that chain to break and reset. So yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Just seemed weird. And then they've got this PowerExpand Plus 7-in-1 Thunderbolt mini dock, Thunderbolt 3 mini dock, they call it. It is $199, and as you might guess, it has 7 ports on it. I do not believe it has a second Thunderbolt port. In fact, I'm looking at it now. It does not. So it's only got the one Thunderbolt port, so there's no daisy chaining. Interestingly, and I haven't tested this because I don't have any devices that are USB-C but not Thunderbolt, but both of these can work with USB-C only devices. It won't do Thunderbolt pass-through for all the obvious reasons, but it will sort of do that connection for you, which I thought was interesting. So, yeah, nice to see. Like, what's really nice is that there's another sort of, top tier Thunderbolt 3, the 13-in-1 sort of let's get you everything on your desktop. We've had OWC and we've had CalDigit, and now we've got Anker in that world, which was the exciting thing to me. So pretty good. You got a couple of you have a cool stuff found, John, with you got a hardware and a software. Yeah. Piece of hardware. So I got something in the mail, that just happens with us here. And I was like, well, what is being sent to me? And I open it up, and it's a Logitech BRIO webcam, which I believe you have already, Dave. Mm-hmm. So before I had the 930C, which is a nice camera, but it's 1080p, I think is the best it can do. Whereas this one is a 4K. So, but the technology in this, Dave, so they have all sorts of adjustments and what do they call it here? Bright light or something. But it's got HDR in it. Yeah, and you're right. They call it right light. Yeah, which makes it work really well in low light scenarios. Like I've always really appreciated the color and the clarity that the BRIO delivers. I mean, it's their flagship camera, so it's not surprising, but yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so last night I actually was doing some video work with this, and the lights were off, Dave. And the picture that I got from this without any external lighting was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they cranked up the gain or the exposure or something like that, but it was a nice picture. And then so a few things. So one, the connector on the back. So I was looking at the back, and it's like, oh, it's USB-C. Why is it USB-C? Well, you need some bandwidth to do 4K video. So it's a USB 3. It shows up on my USB 3 hub.
Sure. But you could plug it in USB-A. I mean, you can send that kind of bandwidth over USB-A.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it comes with a USB-C to USB-A cable.
Right.
Though I suppose I could do a USB-C to USB-C cable if I wanted to.
Totally.
But yeah, and then it comes with a couple and then I was like, well, how can I get 4K content out of this? So they also offer a couple of pieces of software that I downloaded that I don't think will work with the prior camera. So one is, what do they call it? Logi Capture.
Okay.
Is some video software you could download for this. And I was actually able to take some videos. Let me look here. And the resolution is 3840 by 2160, which is pretty good. So
that's 4K. That's the 3840 is what defines 4K. So
yeah. And same, I did a snapshot, and the picture is 3840 by 2160. Yep. And then they also offer, now the other thing, I was like, oh man, I wonder if I have the latest firmware, because their existing utility, which is the camera settings, I think they call it.
Okay.
There's an additional, and I don't know if you've messed with it. There's an additional piece of software that I think is used to interact with it and maybe update the firmware called Logitech G Hub.
Okay. No, I got to mess with this, huh?
Yeah, check that out. So there's a couple of additional pieces of software that take advantage of what this camera can do.
Interesting.
But no, I'm really impressed.
Yeah, it's great. And it's got, adjustable field of view on it too. So I think you can go from 65 degrees to 90 degrees or something like that. So, which makes allows you all those options of how much you want to have in and where you want the clarity of the camera to focus and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I'm looking right now. And so it's like, that
was a bad idea to look right now because now your video is out of sync.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I quit it, so maybe we'll catch up again.
I don't think we will. I think go ahead and restart Chrome would be the solution there, my friend.
Reload?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Because when John's video goes out of sync, his audio goes out of sync too. Are you back in sync with us, my friend?
Are we?
Yes, it's good.
Okay.
For whatever reason, your audio gets delayed whenever you do whatever that is. So
don't run camera utilities when doing a live show.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right. That's okay.
All right. So that's pretty cool. And then I had something DNS related.
Okay.
So at first I thought it was so Twitterific is the client that I use.
Okay.
And it wasn't loading graphics in a timely manner, either icons for people or when people posted pictures and stuff, it was not showing them. And I'm like, what is it? Maybe it's a cache.
Sure.
It's always a cache, right? And there's a feature in it to clear the cache. Well, that wasn't it. That didn't do it. So I'm like, well, who else can I blame for this problem? And you know who I can blame? DNS, Dave. At some point, I had set my DNS to the default for my ISP, and apparently I guess my ISP, especially with everybody being home and stuff, I think their name servers are getting slammed. So I'm like, well, let me find a better performing one. Now, in the past, so I'm going to say that there is this thing called Namebench.
Okay.
Which you can run in a package manager. Don't do that.
Okay.
Something is seriously broken with it because when I ran it this time around, it was just like, I can't find any name servers, public name servers, and your ping times are horrible. And I'm like, okay, you know what?
Right.
Let's see if we can find a better utility.
Okay.
And I think there is a better utility, Dave, here. But here's the caveat.
Yeah.
So, Gibson Research Corporation makes... Oh,
Steve Gibson, GRC. We love Steve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have a free little app called DNS Benchmark. So that's kind of fun. Here's the problem, though. It's Windows. So...
okay.
So I had to run it under Parallels. Now, they advertise that you can also run it under Wine, but...
interesting.
Wine, the latest Wine client that I was able to find doesn't run under Catalina because I think it's 32-bit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But, with no problem running this under Parallels. And then, it gave me a list. And I think the ones I'm using now, which seem to be okay, are Google, which is 8888. And then 1111 is my secondary. And that seemed to fix it. So everything's nice and snappy now.
So 8888 is Google, 1111, 1111, is Cloudflare. Cloudflare normal. 1112 is Cloudflare normal plus malware protection. 1113, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, but it's all in there, Cloudflare for Families thing. But 1113 is Cloudflare plus malware plus adult content protection, which is pretty cool. So I like the fact that they're doing that stuff. That's, I think that's helpful. So,
yeah. So if you're having network performance issues, check your DNS and maybe update the settings there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually your ISP ones should be, and maybe it was just a transient problem, but
Yeah. Well, and there was a problem on Friday afternoon. I forget what time it was with Cloudflare, like in some, but not all geos. So like there were, if you were running, like as we use Cloudflare as our DNS provider here at Mac Observer and Mac Geek Gab, and they provide, like, in addition to DNS, they provide so much more. Like, they're really focused on making the internet as fast and as secure as they can. They're not the only company, but it's nice to see what they're doing, and they'll do a lot of it for free for you So, but we use Cloudflare as our DNS, which meant that I think there was about a 25-minute period on Friday where, let's say, I don't know, there were 6 or 8 points of presence that couldn't get to Cloudflare destinations. One of the big ones was San Jose, so you heard a lot about it, but it was like, I mean, we looked at the traffic. It was like, yeah, okay, it dipped like a little bit, but it wasn't like it fell out the bottom like Twitter would have had us believe. But Twitter, well, I mean, especially in the tech industry, there is an overwhelming percentage of people in the San Francisco Bay Area. So it's when something happens to them, it's like, oh yes, the whole world is down. It's like, well, no, but your part of the world is, and that's relevant to you. That's fine. So
yeah. And the other thing could have been Twitter could have been being hacked or something. I think you may have heard about that recently.
Twitter, it sounds like, I didn't dig too deep into it, but from what I understood, there was a bit of a social engineering hack that gave someone access to verified accounts on Twitter, and that to be a bit of a problem.
And some high profile.
Well, most high profile accounts are verified, right? Like that was the problem is, for sure.
Yeah. And it was like some sort of Bitcoin scam or something.
Yeah. Donate to this Bitcoin address and I'll match your donation. And like, I mean, that's, It
was like double your money. It's like, oh, what a great deal.
What a great deal.
Was an inside job.
Well,
somebody hacked, I think, their internal. What did I see? It's like somebody, I think, hacked their internal Slack network and was able to scrape some data from that. Or,
it's like I said. It as it was explained to me, it seemed like somebody social engineered their way in there. But you're right. It could have been an inside job, and then that's a different type of social engineering. It's a longer game, but yeah. Very, very interesting. All right, John, I want to take a minute here and talk about our sponsors for today, if that works for you, my friend.
Absolutely.
All right. You folks know me. I care about what I listen to. In fact, I can kind of be really picky about it. I'm picky about how it sounds. I'm picky about how things fit in my ears. That whole true wireless thing really matters to me. And I have been testing out the new everyday E25 earbuds from our next sponsor, Raycon here, and I am super blown away. These things are super comfortable. They fit in my ears way better than AirPods or AirPods Pro. I mean, I just put them in and boom, they fit. But they come with 3 different sizes in each of 3 different types of ear tips that you can, interchange. They've got silicone. They've got a double flanged one, which I personally love. I'm a huge fan of those flange things because they really get to seal nice and really get in there. And then they've got a foam one too, small, medium, and large in each of those types. So you really can get a good fit for yourself. When they're locked in, they provide up to 40 dB of noise rejection. That's even better than the custom fit things I wear on stage, believe it or not. And they sound great. They've got a nice kind of rich but not overstated low end. They've got a good sparkle on the high end. I've tested them with all of my songs. I have a playlist of things, believe it or not, to test earphones because that way I have a baseline. You've got to check them out. And there's a deal. Right? Because now's the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/MGG. That's buyraycon.com/MGG for 15% off Raycon wireless earbuds. BUYRAYCON.com/MGG. And our thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this episode. Our next sponsor is Linode. No matter what you're doing these days, especially with your business, you are almost certainly going to need a server. Now, you're going to be the expert of the content that you put on your server. It might be that you're a developer and you use the server for development. And if that's the case, great. You can get right to the command line and all of that. But it also might be that you just want to spin up a WordPress site and get things rolling, or a Minecraft server even, for have some fun at home, because that's what we're doing these days. No worries. Their cloud manager over there at Linode takes care of you. You don't ever have to even know what the command line is because they've got all these pre-configured ways of setting up your server. You answer some questions about your passwords and stuff, and then it builds it for you. In either case, you're worried about what you're doing, and Linode is worrying about making sure your server runs smooth and clean all the time. Everything there, even their $5 a month Nanode server, runs on native SSD storage connected to their 40 gigabit network, industry-leading processors. This is the place that you want to go, especially because they're so affordable and so flexible. You can just configure what you need and only pay for what you need. And speaking of paying, you, for being a Mac Geek Gab listener, get a $20 credit. That's right. Right out of the gate. You don't have to do anything other than go to our special link. Nothing more. Linode.com/MGG. Linode.com/MGG. Our thanks to Linode for sponsoring this episode. These days, it seems like companies are putting CBD in everything. And it can be a good thing. I've talked about on this show before how CBD really changed everything about what was going on with the sort of lingering pain I had with my Bell's palsy a decade plus ago. More recently, it has really, quite frankly, helped me with some of the re-entry anxiety that I was feeling with the whole, COVID thing and all of that. If you don't know where to start, there's a company in Vermont that's down to earth and doing things differently with CBD. And that is our next sponsor, Sunsoil, Sunsoil. They make CBD into capsules, into droplets. And the nice part about the droplets, I've got some of those, is they flavor them. I've got cinnamon flavored droplets. They don't taste like the CBD hemp plant at all. They just have this really nice cinnamon flavor. It's great. All their CBD at Sunsoil is USDA certified organic, and they keep it simple because most of their products just have two ingredients, coconut oil and hemp. And this is the most affordable CBD I have ever found. I was shocked when I saw the prices. You've got to check out what Sunsoil is doing. All of their stuff is tested. You can scan the QR code on the bottle, and it will bring you to a web page that shows you all the test results to make sure that you know what you're getting. Sunsoil makes pure and simple CBD products at an unbeatable price. And because you're a Mac Geek Gab listener, get 30% off your first order by going to sunsoil.com/MGG. That's sunsoil.com/MGG for 30% off your first order. Our thanks to Sunsoil for sponsoring this episode. All right, John, I want to go to Ev the Nerd, in fact, with a tip for us this week. So, Ev, let's see if we can have you take it
John
away.
And Dave. I recently had an interesting problem where I couldn't seem to stream a live video event. This particular event was through Twitch, and I tried 3 different times, but it didn't end up working until I turned on a VPN. As soon as I turned on a VPN, it worked instantly. What was probably going on is that AT&T throttles video, and my guess is especially live video. So when I was trying to load my event, it was not working. Now this particular event only streams in 720. So I think with AT&T's unlimited plan, they allow you to stream, quote, DVD quality with their, another quote, unlimited service. Even though realistically it's capped at 22 gigs because who can really use DSL speeds for GPS and such?
Right.
Just to clarify, this is over AT&T Cellular with their non-prepaid plans. Just thought I would share what I found.
Smart. Wow. I'm surprised to learn that AT&T isn't doing more things like packet inspection. I mean, I guess it would be really hard to know what type of content is being sent over a VPN connection, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be a way for them to say, yeah, but this is still video, so we're gonna throttle that down. But I guess not. I mean, that's what VPNs do. right? They make it so that no one looking at your stream knows what you're doing other than connecting to a VPN. And we say it all the time. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I ran into that the other day. A VPN is a good way to, mask your traffic. So our local, one of our local grocery stores offers free Wi-Fi.
Okay.
But they have some sort of security on it. The reason I know this is because, so for example, I like to buy my lottery tickets at this place or use the machine. And actually the Connecticut Lottery has an app that I try to run. And sometimes I want to get info on the tickets. Well, if I'm on the Wi-Fi in the store and I try to load the app or run it, it'll say unable to load web page. Why? Because they have, I think it's some Cisco security thing in the way. So the way to solve that problem is to either run a VPN or use my data connection, which I got a lot of data, so that's not a problem.
Right. But
yeah, it was, I'm like, why can't you connect? It works at home.
That's crazy. So they'll sell you the ticket, but they won't let you connect to. I mean, I'm sure it's just a blanket filter that they have where it's like, okay, there's no dating sites, no chat sites, no gambling, no, adult stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
I just thought it's funny because, so they had, and I think at one point it brought up a page when I tried to load it in a web browser and it's like, you can't go here because it's gambling. I'm like, but you guys sell lottery tickets, so why
still
is
gambling?
That not okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah, it's good. All right, cool. I mentioned we had some iCloud syncing stuff to talk about. I actually had it on the list. And then we got Abel's question in, which will sort of walk us through what we had going on. Abel says, my contacts are not syncing across my devices. What is the best method? Easy for me to say. Best method to resync contacts with iCloud. Of course, without getting caught. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I've been going through this. In fact, my symptoms started when I tried to solve a reminders syncing problem or help a listener with a reminders syncing problem, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that. And so I've been unable until this week to get my reminders to sync from amongst any of my devices, right? Like it would, and it all, I think for the reminders, not necessarily for contacts, but I think the path to solution land is the same path. But with reminders, it's very clear to me based on the symptoms I was seeing that it relates back to the change in Apple's whole CalDAV and not CalDAV infrastructure that started back in the fall, John, with iOS 13 and Catalina, right? Where what Apple's reminders app sees for reminders is not the same thing that you will see, not the same database that you will see when you connect via CalDAV anymore. You can connect via CalDAV and sync to that, but they are two completely separate things. So it's kind of nice that Apple just leaves that up there, but it's separate and it won't appear in your reminders app and vice versa. And the part about reminders that stinks is third parties can't put URLs in them. And I use a lot of reminders that are like, oh, go check this thing once a week and it's got a URL in it. And if it can't do that, then I don't use it. But, which is why I haven't been using Apple's reminders. When I would add a new list in the reminders app, it would add phantom lists from the old days, John. Yeah, it was like, okay, this stuff's got to go away. And I narrowed it down and finally proved that it was coming from iCloud, even though I couldn't see it in iCloud because nothing would sync back up. It was a whole mess. But anyway, I finally gave up. I mean, not gave up. I finally, bullheaded persistence got me to the end of everything I could think to try. So I called Apple and explained all this stuff to them and showed them what was going on and showed them, they can do screen sharing, as you know, on your Mac. They can also do screen sharing on your iPhone, which I find very interesting, since you can't let me screen share from your iPhone, John, which is odd, but Apple can simply ask and give it permission, give Apple permission, and boom, they can see your iPhone, which is kind of cool. And so, although maybe there is a way to screen share from the iPhone, like maybe there's a workaround. We got to think about that. Anyway, stay on track. So so I just couldn't get things to sync ever usually. And sometimes they would sync, but not reliably. And that was, between my phone, my iCloud.com/reminders to see what the cloud was showing, my Mac, none of them would do it. And my remind D process would be running at 100% all of the time on my Mac. And so when I was on the phone with Apple, they had me do some stuff. And of course, I told them everything I'd done, but I also said, look, I can't solve this. So, go, like, teach me something. This would be great. I've tried all these things, just so you know, but I'm here willing to learn. Like, let's go. And we did talk. I did say to them, let's go through this, but my gut tells me that we are not going to be able to solve it, and that we're going to need to have you wipe out the reminders portion of my iCloud database. And once I got to a high enough tech, they said, that's something we can do for you, but let's try a few other things first. To my knowledge, they never did that. But maybe they did. I don't know. Now for the part that's, I think, relevant to any sort of syncing problems with iCloud stuff. The first thing, make a backup of whatever the data is that you're messing with. So if it's your contacts data, you can make a backup in the contacts app. If it's your reminders data, there is no easy way to back that up that I know of. But I used BusyCal because BusyCal will read that stuff, and then I was able to export it to ICS files so that I had those. But you could look in, I think library reminders is where some of that data is stored, and back that up. But you want to make sure you have a backup for all the obvious reasons. What seemed to have solved this for me is the age-old turn it off and turn it on again with some very specific things. And I wound up having to do this a few days later on my MacBook Air to get it to sort of join the party. And I'll explain what we went through. So what he had me do is he said, how do you feel about turning off reminders on your Mac? And I'm like, totally fine. He's like, yeah, you're not worried about losing data? I'm like, no, the data that's in here is not relevant to me. I just want it to calm down and stop trying to sync all the time. And he said, great. So we went into iCloud. We turned off reminders on my Mac. And then he said, make sure you wait 2 minutes. And really what we were waiting for is my Mac to unravel and unwind all of the things that it had. On my MacBook Air, that took 30 minutes. I don't know what kind of data it had, but I had not been troubleshooting on my MacBook Air over this period of time. I had basically focused on my iMac in the office and my iPhone. And I had already done the turn it off and turn it on again with those and the reboot and all of that stuff. So I think there was a lot of data that was stored in iCloud that was being pulled down and not quite processed, because when I turned it off on my MacBook Air, that remind D process ran for a long time. And so I just waited until it was done. And again, this is another one of those scenarios where it's good to know what, normal looks like so that you can see, okay, now my Mac is at what I would consider baseline. It's not like none of these sync processes are running. It's just the normal Windows server and things like that, right? So I just did it while we were watching a movie or something at the house, and I just let it run. Once it was finished, so 2 minutes on some of my devices, 20 to 30 minutes on another, I re-enable reminders on the Mac. Again, wait, in Apple's parlance, 2 minutes. It took probably 5 minutes, I'll say, on my iMac when I was on the phone with Apple, because we had given up. And it took another 30 minutes on my MacBook Air. But then I was able to add a new list, and I immediately watched it appear in the web interface. And it was like, aha, this is working. And then delete the list and, do all those things. But in reminders, adding and removing lists is sort of the thing that triggers a more complete sync than just adding and removing reminders. I don't know what that magic is for contacts, because I haven't been in the unfortunate scenario that Abel is in where he needs to reset these things. So I can't see any difference between any of these things. But in reminders, adding and removing lists was the thing that triggered either problems or the evidence of the solution. But it's definitely watch activity, turn off the item or items in iCloud, although I really would only do one of these at a time so that you know what you're doing and why things are doing what they're doing. But I would disable it in the system preferences and then wait. and don't like rebooting isn't going to solve the problem because your computer actually needs to process stuff. So it's not just turn it off, reboot, turn it back on, which works with some other things. This is one of those turn it off and let it finish scenarios. So, and somebody in the chat room is saying something about that with notes. I'll read that in a minute. Do you have any thoughts on this, John?
There was, we were talking iCloud a couple of episodes ago, and I was remembering, I know there's a diagnostic tool for it, but I couldn't remember the name. I knew it had something to do with clouds. Yes. I thought it was so there are a couple of tools here, and then I finally found it on one of my machines here. So these may help you in the future, Dave, or anybody that has iCloud problems, but our pals at the Eclectic Light Company, or PAL, has a couple of utilities that can be used to diagnose iCloud. One is Cirrus, and that was the name of the cloud that I forgot.
Sure.
And another is called Bailiff. So Cirrus is just general diagnostics. One thing that it claims to be able to do, though, Dave, is to jumpstart syncing, which may be useful for some.
I tried messing with this. I immediately, well, not immediately. When I had the problem again, and I saw it wasn't fixed on my MacBook Air, it was like, okay, like this sucks. And I was like, I know Howard's got to make something. Like you, I couldn't remember the names of the two things, but I knew they were out there. And these seem, I could be reading it wrong, but these seem to only focus on iCloud Drive items, not on the other things in iCloud, which calendars and contacts and reminders are sort of the other things in iCloud.
So that seems to be correct. So
yeah, so I couldn't find a way with these utilities to see anything about what I was working with, but maybe there is, right? I mean, there's got to be something, or there's got to be a way, even if somebody hasn't like exploited it into an app yet, like Howard has with this stuff. But yeah, I know that was the only thing. I did notice, though, that while Howard may or may not be able to say publicly that he has a developer kit of the new Apple Silicon stuff, Cirrus 1.9 is available in two different versions. One is called Cirrus 1.9, El Capitan, Sierra, High Sierra, Mojave, and Catalina. And then another is 1.9U, Universal app for El Capitan, Sierra, High Sierra, Mojave, Catalina, and Big Sur.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
If you look at the release notes for 1.9U, it says that it will run natively on either Intel or Apple Silicon, which I thought was pretty cool. I know. Yeah. So that it's cool to see that stuff evolving. So, yeah. All right. So hopefully that helps. I think I'm on the other side of this, although I still have one thing that won't sync my reminders, John. And again, this is an academic, mostly academic exercise for me right now, because again, I use different things. I use BusyCal for my reminders, but my Apple Watch will not show my iCloud reminders. It won't even show my lists from iCloud. And I wiped my watch and restored it from a backup from my phone, the kind of the thing that you do. And that did not solve it either. So there is something amiss with my watch. I still have my original watch because I'm using a Series 5 now as my sort of normal one, but my OG watch that arrived on release day, April 25th, 5 years ago or whatever it was, still runs. And so I could wipe that out and not restore it from a backup. I could just kind of set it up new and see if that'll sync reminders. So I guess that's the next step. But, that's how it goes. All right. Yeah.
And the other thing that you mentioned Apple Care. So you were talking with them?
I did. Yeah.
Here's just something weird that happened, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't think anything of it. I was, doing stuff on my MacBook, and all of a sudden I got a notification. Apple Care would like to screen share. And I'm like, nope.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if somebody because Apple can remotely, access your machine if you allow them to.
But that's exactly what I saw on both my Mac and my phone this week. Was they said, I'm going to send you a screen sharing request, and then that exact thing came up. I wonder why, they hit the button on you. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't think it was. I mean, it looked like a real notification.
Yeah.
So I don't know if somebody typed in the wrong IP address or something, but it was kind of weird. Of course, I said no.
Sure. It's linked to your iCloud account because that's how the guy was like. He's like, which iMac are you on? And I told him, and he's like, okay, you should see a thing. And I was like, yep, I see a thing. And like, oh, that's fascinating. Okay, cool. Yeah. Interesting. Huh. That's interesting. It is good. I mean, even when you're screen sharing, you get a little drop down in the top of your thing that you can pause it and resume it. So if something comes up that you're like, oh, I don't want you to see this, because they tell you, we will be recording our session here, you know, for whatever quality assurance or whatever. They're like, so make sure you don't have anything on your screen you don't want recorded, you know, that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. But I mean, that, you know, like good that they're very upfront about that. So, yeah. All right. We have, while we're sort of on the your data with Apple thing, we have a question from Steve. So Steve, let's see if this works.
Hey guys, quick question. I was listening to, I think Dave was talking about how he backs up his iTunes music library to his Synology. I have a QNAP Thunderbolt NAS. So Dave or John, just how do you split out the, I guess the iTunes music DRM tracks from tracks that you own or bought through iTunes in the backup process? Do you back them all up? How do you do an incremental backup such that you're just not creating a whole bunch of duplicate tracks, that sort of thing? I do like the idea of, maintaining a backup offline of my primary Mac and away from iTunes management and exposing it to my Plex server. So I understand how to get music into Plex. That's cool. My struggle is, how do I specifically incrementally back up new purchase tracks or new ripped tracks from the my iTunes library, and leaving behind the DRM'd tracks in case I choose to leave Apple Music and let's say go to Spotify or somewhere else. Great, guys. Do enjoy the podcast. Thank you very much.
There we are. Now, can you hear me? Right. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the audio,
I think, our first video question.
That's what I was just saying. Yeah. So the people on the audio stream heard that little hiccup there. The people on the video stream, yeah, I forgot that I've got to mute us when we have an audio question, and I just got to remember to do that. So operator error on that. But yes, Steve, for those of you watching, is the one who sent in our first video question. Actually, that's not true. We have had other people send in video questions in the past. We've just never had a way to play them, so we haven't. But yeah, happy to do that. Of course. All right. So this is a good question, and the good news is that Apple makes this super easy. For backing things up, I would use something like Carbon Copy Cloner, ChronoSync, Super Duper, one of those things that's going to take a look at two folders on, two different destinations or two different places, compare and do your incremental backup so that you're only adding the new things to it. I happen to use Carbon Copy Cloner for this, but any of those other sort of things that are built to do smart syncing and incremental updates would be the magic. Now, the question is, the second part of the question is, how do you make sure your Apple Music stuff is not part of your your backup, because your Plex server isn't going to play your Apple Music stuff. And the good news is Apple makes this super easy. On my machine, it's still called my iTunes media folder because it exists on an external drive, and I just haven't renamed it. I haven't had a need to, but it would be your music files folder or whatever. In that folder, whatever it is, you will see lots of different folders. Things like podcasts would be in there, voice memos would be in there, tones, TV shows, books, all kinds of things. And also a folder called music and a folder called Apple Music. So for me, backing up to my Plex library, I don't care about the other things. So all I back up is that music subfolder. And I make sure not to back up my Apple Music subfolder so that all I'm getting are the tracks that are mine and playable on anything that I try to play them on, and not DRM to be only played inside the music app. And by doing that, it has worked flawlessly. Obviously, I don't have the ability to play Apple Music tracks, streamed Apple Music tracks in my Plex environment, but that's just how that goes. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Yeah, John?
Hope so.
Good. Cool. Cool. All right. And as you alluded earlier, John, we have a question from Todd about video. He says, I've noticed that when I attach an LCD TV or monitor to my 15-inch 2017 MacBook Pro via an HDMI cable, that the colors look very vibrant, like red is way too red, etc. But if I attach that same monitor via DisplayPort, the colors look normal, similar to what I would see on my MacBook Pro screen. He says, I've tried adjusting color via the Display Preferences color tab, but never can seem to get it even close to right. Any ideas? So I don't have a magic answer for this, but I have some thoughts. And of course, if you folks have magic answers, feedback at macgeekgab.com would be the place to go.
I heard you say feedback at macgeekgab.com this time, Dave.
I'm glad the sound is on because, yes, I said feedback at macgeekgab.com, and they don't even need to be magic answers. They just need to be answers or even ideas are totally fine. But what I have seen, and it may be related to this, and it may be even the cause of this, is that depending on the model of your Mac and the way it's connected, you might be getting different refresh rates when you connect via HDMI versus DisplayPort. I know there are some Macs out there that can do 60 hertz with DisplayPort, but only 30 hertz with HDMI. I think I have one of those Macs downstairs. And so your TV or your LCD screen or whatever may be responding differently to a 30 hertz signal versus a 60 hertz signal. And that may be where the color issues are coming from. I'm not certain of this, obviously, but there's, it is a whole different thing in terms of how it connects and sees everything and all of that. So that's kind of my thought on this, John. Do you have any thoughts?
One thought, system preferences, display, color. You may want to look at what display profile is being selected. I've had that throw me for a loop sometimes in that I'm like, wow, this looks totally wrong. Why is that? Oh, because it, for whatever reason, picked the wrong display profile.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. He had said that he kind of messed around in there, but I mean, for anybody else messing with this problem, that's absolutely a good place to look too. Yeah. And, look on your monitor. In fact, I would even try if you can, connecting to your monitor with DisplayPort and HDMI. And usually when you connect, your monitor will give you some information about what it thinks the connection looks like. And that might be the magic for you here is, looking at that and knowing, okay, here's what it's seeing. That just might give you a clue as to sort of where to head with things. So, yeah. All right, John, shall we go to Carsten here?
Sure.
Carsten says, I'm preparing to transition to the new iPhone when it comes out, and I'm checking my apps, and I came across the Google Authenticator app. I have 37 sites registered, and if memory serves me, if I clone my old iPhone to another device, the Google Authenticator app is usually empty, and that's if I'm using iMazing. He's like, I don't know about other paths, but certainly he's been through some path where the data inside Google Authenticator, we'll talk about in a minute what Google Authenticator is. He found some research that talked about copying things and that sort of thing. He says, but any suggestions about how to sync the 37 two-factor authentication sites I already have to a new device is appreciated. He says, I don't want to put them all in again manually. And so Google Authenticator is a separate app. that essentially turns your phone into what's in the industry, I think, referred to as a token. And you sync up whatever website you're connecting with your Google Authenticator app, usually by way of a QR code that you scan with the Authenticator app with your camera on the screen. And now the Google Authenticator app will, every 30 seconds or 60 seconds, whatever it is, for that website display for you a new code. And then that new code matches what the website's looking for. So you enter your username, your password, then this second factor, aka the contents of the Google Authenticator app, are your second factor, and now you can get in. The problem with this is the Google Authenticator app does not sync its data anywhere. That may not be a problem in that makes it more secure, but it also makes it difficult to move past the device. And I think the idea is for it to be like those little tokens that you might get from your bank or might have gotten from your bank in the past, the little RSA ID tokens or whatever they are that, like you can't clone them. And if you lose it, well, you got to call your bank and get another one and, resync that with your account. And this is why I stopped using Google Authenticator app, John, and I started using 1Password for my two-factor authentication stuff because it does sync it. Now, that does make it less secure for exactly the reasons we just talked about, because when I sync in my Google Authenticator, it's separate. But when I sync in 1Password, I've got my username, my password, and my two-factor authentication code all right there in the same place, and it's synced to all my devices. So if you get one of my devices and you can log into it and my 1Password to unlock everything, well, you have the keys to the kingdom. And, it's that whole continuum between ultimate security and ultimate convenience, and we find our spot and we live there. So that's why, in fact, I just had, I won't mention the website, but I had an account that I use fairly regularly and has important data to me in it. And I wanted to add two-factor authentication to it. And it only worked with even a separate app, like wasn't even Google Authenticator, which would have worked with 1Password. It was a separate app. I can't remember the name of it. And it was like, yeah, no, I don't want my access to that limited to some app I've literally never heard about before. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with my username and password and just change my password on a semi-regular basis. And for this particular website, I hadn't changed my password since before my kids were born. So it was probably a good time to refresh that. So, and I did. So now it's on a more regular rotation. So I don't know. What do you think, John? Did I get any part of this wrong too? Like you have far more specific knowledge about these things than I do.
Everything sounded right. Actually, I was wondering. Yeah. So Secure ID is the little RSA, temporal based thing,
right?
Which I used one day. I'm actually looking here. So I'm a LastPass type of guy, and I was looking, and apparently LastPass supports this, though I haven't really messed with it, though I probably should.
So you're not doing any 2FA stuff in LastPass?
Not at this point, no.
All right. Well, probably certainly, folks, by the time the show comes out, John will have updated, and it's no use trying to hack him because he'll already be using 2FA on all the things that you would think to attack him on. So you're safe, John. It's all good.
Hope so.
Yeah. Well, that's the nice part about having. I'm sure LastPass works very similarly to the way 1Password does it, but it's super convenient to do it all in that one app. Because it just works and it gets you right through. So, but again, with that convenience comes, some level of reduction in security, because now that data is in more than one place. It's two factors authentication, I guess, is maybe what we call that. So 1.5 factors. I don't know. All right. What are we have some comments here. Oh, I meant to circle back to this. So I will before we go to the next question. When we were talking about iCloud syncing, Warren had at live.macgeekgab.com had said, I had to restore notes for someone. And every time I restored from an earlier iCloud backup, it would get the notes and then instantly resync the current notes, which got rid of what she needed. I had to go to airplane mode super quickly to get them back. So that's an interesting thing, right? Because iCloud, you can't tell iCloud not to sync and yet retain the copy of the data that it has. But if it cannot sync because it doesn't have an internet connection, well, that solves that problem. So that's very interesting, Warren. Yeah, to do that, then back them up, then let it sync and overwrite them and then restore them. And there you go. I like that. That's good. I'm glad we came back to that. That's actually a great little thing. And then about this last one, Alan567 was saying Duo offers their app free, and you can do the same thing as Google Authenticator. Duo allows you to set up for recovery on another device. So, okay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. That's good. Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody. Good stuff. We love the real-time feedback. It's actually made a huge difference to the show. And I mean, I know we've been doing it for almost 10 years now or something, but it does help. All right, cool. Anything more on that, John, before we move on to Gray's question?
No.
Okay. Gray says, I had a new experience recently, repeated every 30 seconds or so FaceTime calls from two unfamiliar email addresses. When I would reject the call, they would call back. I couldn't figure out how to block a FaceTime call. I considered turning my phone off, but since my computer was also ringing, that wouldn't really have helped. I sent a text reply, "Can I call you later?" and got a text response. "Don't know who this is, but I think you have the wrong number." Kind of ironic, I thought. He says, finally, I decided to answer, though that wasn't high on my wish list. It was a couple of young kids who had mistyped a friend's email. They looked nonplussed to see an old geezer on their screen. I told them I wasn't playing video games tonight, and we all parted ways friendly. He says, my question is, how does one block email-based FaceTime calls? I can block texts in messages and emails via junk, but I couldn't think of a way to stop FaceTime. He says, I mean, what if it was, something undesirable on the other end of that? Yeah, absolutely. That's, AirDrop. Those of us that have left AirDrop on in, everyone can send to you mode have certainly experienced inappropriate things sent to us in, crowded public environments. So I guess maybe social distancing is helping to curb that too. My original thought, and this is hard to replicate because it's rare that I get a FaceTime call from someone that's not in my contacts list. But the first thing I would try is to go into phone on your iPhone, go into the phone app, go to recents, tap the I next to the inbound caller. And at the bottom of that screen should be block this caller. If that doesn't do it, though, then maybe you have to, you had some thoughts on this, John. Did you tried it or?
I took a different approach. I think yours is correct, but I took a different approach. I'm like, okay. So I ran the FaceTime app on my Mac.
Okay.
And here's the thing that's annoying is that the way to do this is pretty different between Mac OS and iOS.
Yeah.
I think iOS is the right way to do it. But I was eventually, so when you run FaceTime on the Mac, you'll see two lists. One is the list, and I'm not going to run it now because I don't want to screw up the video.
Thank you.
I learned my lesson. But it shows you two columns. One is the list of recent calls, and then there's a blocked list. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went to the blocked list and I'm like, well, let me type in an email address.
Sure.
Their interface doesn't let you do that. But I was able to eventually get an email address on that list.
Okay.
But at least on the Mac OS, I had to create a contact with that email address. Then I was able to add it to the blocked list.
Okay, so that would be the other way to do it is if there is no option to add just a rando email to the block list and the recent callers, then do exactly what you said, create a contact. And you only need to create one contact called blocked if you want, and just add any email addresses in, right?
Smart.
Right. And then if it's already blocked, well, if the entire contact is blocked, then every email address you associate with that contact would just automatically be blocked. So a little bit of setup time, but after that, just like add to contacts, blocked. I don't know.
Yeah, because my thought was, well, what a waste of space to, put bogus contact info. But yeah, just create one and then add anybody that keeps bugging you.
Yeah,
okay,
and you can do that with text messages and any of the other things, right? Just like name a contact manually blocked, and then you're good to go. So
yeah. The other thing I learned is that I tried to simulate this by FaceTiming myself, but that doesn't send an email. Apparently that keys on your phone number. So
because you already have the contact, like you already have yourself as a contact. I think that's why that would happen. That would make sense. So yeah, interesting. Fun though. See, lots of little tips. 5 new things. We guarantee it even. All right. We do have some time though, so we can go. Speaking of time, let's talk about timing of updates of hardware and software and all that stuff. Bill asks, I use Apple's Pages and Numbers a lot. When they're updated, I'm always hesitant to let the app update because they are working just fine for my purposes, and I'm afraid something might break with the update, and I often do not need whatever the new features are. Is this a legitimate concern? Do you always update your apps? So the answers to those questions are not mutually exclusive. They are both, in my opinion, yes, it is a legitimate concern. And yes, I pretty much always update my Apple apps. I've only been burned in a few scenarios, and it's been a long time since that has happened. But I read the release notes of everything before I update. That's just because I'm a nerd, but also because we do this show. And I like to be able to look and see, is there a thing that we should talk about on the show in the release notes? So I don't have automatic updates turned on any of my devices solely because of that. I like to read the release notes, but I update my stuff probably every day. I see the updates and it's like, okay, let's go take a look. So if there's something in there that I rely on, then I might be a little more cautious, or at the very least, I'll let it do the update and then immediately go and test it to make sure that it works in a way that still serves me, so that I'm not surprised in some mission critical scenario like, you got screwed. I don't want that surprise. But yeah, I generally stay up to date with Apple's apps, but it's a legitimate concern. Although I guess I would temper that by saying it hasn't burned me, and we haven't really heard about people getting burned by this all that recently. So I don't know. Maybe it's a low concern. What do you think, John?
I do pretty much what you do. Is I don't do automatic updates because I want to know what's going down.
Sure.
But I found, at least with Apple apps, they're pretty good. Now, you may not know this until you relaunch the app, but the only time this could burn you is that if there's a major, underneath the covers, like notes or reminders, I guess. Every now and then they'll change the format of the data.
Sure. And
that's where you could get burned, but they almost always warn, I think, when they added features to notes, they were pretty clear saying, hey, if you run me, you're going to have to do a conversion to get these features on all your devices.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to hold off then.
Yeah.
So they usually give you a way to bail.
That's true. Like with the reminders thing or the notes change. That's right. Yep. You would have had to be intentionally oblivious to not know that there was some major change about to happen with those things. Yeah. There were a lot of warnings. That's a good point. Yep. Yeah,
because you could, especially if you have a device that isn't on the latest OS, then that may, like right now, my iPad, which is very old, is running iOS 12, and that's all it's going to be running.
Right.
It'll never run 13. Well, maybe I could figure a way to do it, but so
maybe.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Fair point. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, while we're on the update talk, we got questions from Bart and Ben this week that basically both ask the same thing. Bart writes, he says, I recently inherited a small amount of money and would like to get a new MacBook Pro, but I'm not sure if I should get one now or wait for the new MacBook on Apple Silicon. Any advice would be appreciated. I currently have a 2015 MacBook Pro, which is still working well, and I'll be retiring in a couple of years from teaching high school, and thought I would go ahead and get a new computer to last me for the next, say, 10 years. Yeah, that's a fair question. And Ben's question was very similar. Like, you know, I'm looking at a new MacBook Pro in the next, whatever, you know, somewhere between 3 and maybe 24 months, which is not a weird range anymore. 10 years ago, that would have seemed crazy. But now, you know, laptops, computers in general, unless there's some problem with the hardware, like in terms of useful service life, 10 years seems to be about right, at least in terms of the machines that we've gotten in the last 10 years. So, you know, my advice is twofold. There is if you need a computer today, buy what you need today and don't worry about tomorrow paradigm, right? Because there will always be something better coming. If that's not the case, then you probably, like, if Apple doesn't ever release anything better, you might want to stop buying Apple, right? That would be sort of my corollary to that. And we know Apple's got stuff in the pipeline, so I'm not worried about that. But that's sort of the thought process, is there's always going to be a better thing. And yes, technology is going to move forward. If you don't need a computer today, I would wait, because it seems, based on sort of the well-informed rumor mill, and also logic, not the app, the thing we do in our brains, at least we hope we do in our brains, that laptops, specifically the MacBook Air, will likely are good contenders for the first consumer-focused Apple Silicon device. And the reason for that is, you know, there are two platforms of Apple Silicon devices right now. There's the iPhone, well, there's three with the Apple Watch, but there's the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and the iPad. And, you know, MacBook Air and iPad are very closely related in size and power and those sorts of things. They do need to put different PCI lanes in there to support Thunderbolt and things like that. But it makes sense that the MacBook Air might well be the thing that, you know, that is the first consumer-focused Apple Silicon machine. And we will know that within 6 months, maybe less. So, you know, the question then becomes, let's say we fast forward 6 months and I'm just going to say, and the pandemic's over, because I'll add some wishful thinking into that. But also, you know, we know what Apple's device is. It's out. We can order it. We can get it. The question is, do you want to buy the first Apple Silicon Mac? You know, what does the landscape look like in terms of that? We've seen Geekbench data points on what the Mac Mini running Apple Silicon does, the one that developers aren't supposed to tell us about. But if they run Geekbench and Geekbench uploads their results in the background anonymously, well, then we can see them. And guess what? We can see them. And it runs really fast. It's like and remember, Geekbench would presumably be running in emulation mode or Rosetta 2 mode on those, translation mode, I should say, not emulation. And, you know, even still, it's running faster than, you know, Mac Mini now. So, yeah, I think these things will be fast. I think it will be a very, very smooth transition for most of us in terms of what software we can just run without thinking about, is it in translation mode? Is it in, you know, native mode? Hopefully we will get more and more native mode as things go on. More developers like Howard Oakley will put that stuff out, which is great. So, like, but you want to ask that question. If you're comfortable with the idea, if that Apple Silicon Mac came out today, would you be comfortable running it as the machine you rely on, your daily driver? And that answer isn't a universal yes or no. It's different for each of us. I think I'd be pretty comfortable with it, to be honest, based on what I do. I can't foresee anything that I'm doing that would be a major problem. Although I'd want to hear more about how, like, Logic runs and, like, Mimo Live, because we do the video with that. Like, I would have my questions, but, you know, Logic's an Apple app. I'm not really all that worried about that. So yeah, but ask that question, and then maybe that informs your decision. I don't know. Muse for a bit, John. Speculate.
The thought that came to my mind, Dave, is that logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with this.
No.
It just popped in my head when you said logic. I'm like, wow, I remember that.
Yeah.
I would, the only advice I would have, especially getting a portable, I would There were some dark days with the, I think it was called the butterfly keyboard. May want to skip those.
Well, but he's talking about buying brand new, so there's no there's no more butterfly keyboards to be bought anymore.
Oh, I know. No, I was thinking if one thing to consider is you may want to get a recent refurb. Just,
I see what you're saying. Got it.
Because
yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're going to buy Intel, for sure, look at a refurb. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some you want to avoid again.
Right.
I mean, I'm thrilled with the 2019 16-inch. I think it's a fantastic machine.
I think that's generally available on refurb now.
Yeah. After I bought mine.
Right. That's right. It happened right after you bought yours. Of course. Yeah. That's how.
Like, oh, John bought a new one. Okay, let's
unleash
stock
them.
up the refurb store.
That's right.
I don't know if I'd want to get the first one out of the gate that uses Apple Silicon. Just, it's a new thing. I mean, from what we saw at WWDC, though, I mean, it looks like they have all their bases covered as far as it should run most of your stuff. And from what we've seen on the benchmarks, it seems to run them pretty zippy, because you're going from CISC to RISC, I guess, right? I was scratching my head over that. I'm like, is the performance... Because the last time they made a switch, they kind of switched from RISC to CISC, and some people were concerned, is the performance...
Yeah.
What do those terms mean for people scratching their heads over that? So CISC is complex instruction set computing, and RISC is reduced instruction set computing. And the theory is that RISC is better performing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, fair.
But so I would say, I would be concerned about getting the first one out of the gate. I would let other people beta test that.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, again, like I said, there's no universal answer to this. We each have our levels of to further confuse things of risk tolerance, right? Like some of us are just more conservative than others. You tend to be conservative with your technology choices. Like you don't like to run beta software in a production environment, but many people do. In fact, lots of people are really happy with iOS 14 on their daily drivers right now. I'm not one of those yet, but I see why they are. Running it on that iPhone SE, it's working great. So wherever we are on that thing will inform that choice. And you spelled it out perfectly. So for Ben and Bart and anybody else thinking about this, like ask that question of yourself. Am I the type of person that is comfortable running, beta software? I think honestly, running beta software on your daily driver is far riskier than running an Apple Silicon Mac as your daily driver, because that's not, when that comes out, that is not going to be beta, right? Like that Apple will have really tested that, because they can't launch something and have it, be a mess, right? So, just look at what you're used to now and then compare it to what you perceive as the risk of running risk, and go from there. So, yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah. All right. I think I think that's going to have to do it for us today, John. We
oh my gosh.
I know. It's the time.
Time flies when you're having fun, which
it totally does.
I'm having fun.
It's just been a fun one. Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah, I finally gotten you like comfortable doing this video thing and not freaking out when there's problems. Like we had a couple of problems today, right? Like with your video, and then with I had unintentionally muted the audio, and it's like it just rolls. I'm in the system now, so it's mostly good. There's a lot to do, I will say that. Like if I didn't have my pre-flight checklist, I would miss things still. So it's not ingrained in the fingers, but it's good.
And I'm reasonably comfortable with the video.
So I have a thought about that, John.
I'm just concerned, but I think I've gotten over this. I'm just concerned that I'm going to do something embarrassing.
So, that's true of all of us. I can't even imagine how many times we've picked our noses on the show that we are completely unaware of, and perhaps one of you is keeping count, and you'll blackmail us with that number, and that'd be great. We really look forward to that day. But there was something I wanted to point out when you launch Chrome. Because John uses Chrome to connect to me here on Mimo Live, right? And Mimo Live is the app that we're using. It's TV Studio in a box, right? TV Studio in an app on the Mac. It's awesome. When you connect initially each week, you come in at like 640 by 360. And we were speculating earlier pre-show, like pre-show, when it was just you and me, that was because there was something going on CPU-wise on your computer, but we didn't really have time to mess with it. Well, it turns out that in the middle of the show, you created time for us to mess with it when you had to refresh Chrome, John, because you came back at either 19. You've been floating now for the rest of the show between 1920 by 1080 and 1440 by 810. Whereas when you connect at that 640 by 360, it just keeps you there forever. So I think what happens is, do you have Chrome's homepage set to be our secret link, or do you just launch Chrome and hit the secret link? I would say launch Chrome, wait 10 seconds, then hit the secret link, because it seems like something's going on with Chrome as it's getting started that makes it say, I don't have the CPU power to you know what I mean? Because when you do it, when you did it mid-show, it's been super high quality. So
yeah, so it's maybe in the background profiling your system to figure out what resolution should I use? Yeah.
How much can I get away with without, cratering the
choking
CPU?
your system?
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, found that interesting. So I figured I was going to share it with you, and then it just seemed like the appropriate thing to share.
Oh, no, I saw it in the chat room. You're like, hey, John's at 1080p.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
because there's no way, as far as I can tell, there's no way for me to tell the resolution of my video. I mean, I can see it and take a guess.
Right. No, it's controlled by the something in either on my end or your end or, in between. There's a negotiation that happens, and exactly. So you're always 30 frames per second, which really is the important thing, I think. But having the crisper resolution is even better. All right. See, we weren't quite finished, John. We had a couple extra minutes to geek out on, which is fun. That's why we do the show. We like to geek out. And we love that you like to geek out with us. Send us a review. We would love to have your review on Apple Podcasts, or really your favorite place to review shows. There's lots of them now, so we would love it. And if it's been more than 6 months since you've reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts, and I know for some of you it's been more than 6 years, you can and should go well, I hate to say should. I don't want to tell anybody what to do. You can, and we would love it if you went and updated your review, because that basically makes it seem like a new review, and that's a good thing for the whole little thing. So there you go. Yeah, we would love that. We would also love it if you found it in your heart to visit our sponsors, buyraycon.com/MGG, linode.com/MGG, sunsoil.com/MGG, and really you can go to macgeekgab.com/sponsors and see the deals from all the current sponsors, of course, but also even no longer active sponsors whose deals are still active, which can be really handy. For you, it doesn't really help us in any way, but that's okay. We do this for you. It's a two-way street. It's if we can do something that helps you, we just happily do it. It's fine. So we would love to have you leave us a review, very much so. We are running later than I anticipated today, so next week we have a bunch of you folks who are Mac Geek Gab Premium supporters to thank by name. And we will do that in next week's show. But if you want to learn more about it, macgeekgab.com/premium is where you go to learn about that. And then once you're on that list, premium@macgeekgab.com is the email address you get to use to write us and ask us your questions, which is fun. So it's good. Well, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else, John?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, then thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for for helping out in the live thing and keeping us on track and the real-time feedback. Thanks for sharing the show. Tell your friends. We would love to have them join us. The Mac Geek Gab
I do
family.
have something, Dave.
You do? What is
You
your
got us
something?
into this.
I did.
Well, you got us into this. I'm going to get us out. And the way I'm
Okay.
going to get us out is to tell everyone, don't get caught.
Made on a Mac.
And we're out. Cool.